If you could say one thing to your father right now, what would it be?
Why couldn't you tell me you love me? I just turned 84 last week.
Okay. Tell me about your father. Just describe, what was he like? What kind of man was he like?
He was tall. He was about 6'2". He was very impressive when he walked into a room. He was one of those kind of guys that you would look at, you know. So had a great sense of humor, but and everybody loved him. You know, he's loved by men and women both. He was that type of a guy.
Do you know by any chance, do you know much about his father, about your grandfather, what he was like?
My grandfather was a farmer in Kansas. Very tough man from what I've understood. And the type that would say, here's a 122 shell I'm giving you, and when you go out and hunt, I want one rabbit. You know, he was a very tough guy, very tough man. Okay, one more thing about my grandfather.
Absolutely.
When I told you how tough a man he was. When I only met him once. I was about 12 or 13 years old. He didn't have a tooth in his head. He was in his 70s by then, and he had pulled all his own teeth. Now, how many people can do that today? I mean, they were out on a farm where there was no dentist, so if you got a bad tooth, you pulled it yourself. I can't imagine it.
So that's the one and only time you ever met your grandfather?
Only time. I spent about week and a half back there, and I had a .22 rifle myself, and I knew that, you know, he was strict on that. I went out and I shot a jackrabbit. And I come dragging it up. He was sitting on the front porch. He says, "Don't bring that thing in here." Of course, he used a few choice words. Mm-hmm. Get that thing out of here. I didn't know you didn't eat jackrabbits, you know. But they ate the cottontails and the little brush rabbits. They didn't eat the tough old jackrabbits.
On talking about your father, what's the first memory you have of your dad?
First memory. That's a tough one.
Well, you know what? Let me rephrase it. Maybe we'll come back to it. Give me 3 words that describe your dad.
3 words? Big, imposing, tough.
What are the good things you learned from your father?
Well, I know one of the good things, and I appreciate it, that I learned good work ethics from him. I'm sure there's some other things I learned. You know, don't lie, don't sass your mother, things of that nature, because he had a heavy hand, and he didn't tolerate that at all.
What are the bad things you learned from your father?
How to swear. That's probably the worst. I don't know of any others, or I can't recall any right now.
What do you wish your dad would have told you but didn't?
Oh, how to appreciate other people, how to manage money. Yeah, that would have been a great one for me. I had to learn that the hard way. Those are probably the top ones.
What's the most memorable thing that you did with your dad?
Just he and I? Well, I have to say that trip to Kansas, when I met my grandparents for the first time. Although we drove from California to Kansas, there was another couple that went with us because they wanted to go back, and they shared the expenses of the trip. But I was still able to, you know, be with my dad and be with my grandparents, and that was a real thrill to me, to go back there and meet them. and other relatives. Yeah.
Is there something that, I just asked if there's something that your dad would have told you but didn't. Is there something that you wished your dad would have showed you but didn't?
Showed me.
Like, for example, I know with my situation, it's like, I wish my dad would have showed me how to hunt, or how to kiss a girl, or how to treat a lady.
Yeah,
that type of stuff.
yeah. Okay, he did show me how to hunt. That was one of the things he did. He bought me a rifle when I was 12 years old. And I did get to go hunting with him at an early age with him and my uncles. Although I was the tag along, you know, I was a don't get in our way type of thing. Never discussed girls with me. Never, there was never any of that discussion at all.
Is that something you wished he would have done?
I think so. I think I would have had a lot better understanding. You know, at an early age, I'm talking about now.
Anything else you wished he would have showed you but didn't?
Well, he showed me how to be respectful, so I can't say that. I'm sure there is, John, but I can't think of it now.
No, you're fine. What is something that your dad did with you and or your siblings that you would love to do, or that you did with your children? Is there anything in particular that...
Well, he did take us later on weekends to a lake, and we would spend time there that way. There wasn't a lot of that, but we really enjoyed the time that we did get to do that. He was away from home a lot. He was in construction most of the time.
How did that being away from home a lot affect you growing up?
Well, you don't have that father figure there, and you're everything you're learning is from your mom. And then when he does come home, and he starts hollering at you, you don't go, you know, well, I've been doing this all along. How come I can't do it now? He says, you're not going to do that. Well, you know, you kind of take offense at that when you're young. At least I did. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I think what you just said is a common theme for a lot of men. I know even with me, when I was traveling a lot, I'd come home and start barking out orders, and my wife would go, hold on a second.
Yeah.
I haven't been here in a week.
Right. I did the same thing. I got into construction. I traveled a lot, and I'd come home, and I wanted things my way. And it's just, I was duplicating what my father did. Well, one thing my father, this was later on in life after I was an adult and I had my own family and everything. And I was complaining about something, you know, and my dad would say, well, he says, you know, it's going to go on like this for days, and then it's going to get worse. I said, thanks a lot, Dad. That's what I really needed. But that was his sense of humor, you know. But there was a lot of truth to it.
When you got married, was there any advice that your father gave you?
Not one word. No.
Never a conversation about how to be a husband or anything?
No, not a word. That was all learned from scratch.
Now, how about when you became a father?
Well, after I became a father, he showed an interest in the kids. He loved the kids. And outside of that, I can remember him saying, he said, well, you know, you have a really nice little family here. And that's probably the only compliment I ever heard him give me.
The reason why I asked that is so many men I talked to, you know, never got any advice from their fathers.
None. I got none.
About when they became a father, Dad never took them aside and said, okay, now this is what you're going to run into.
Never.
When they got married and become a husband, Dads didn't pull them aside.
No, I had the same treatment.
Yeah. Do you remember your dad ever saying, I love you?
Never. Never did.
And how did that impact you?
I just grew up that way and thought that's the way it was. It didn't bother me until later in life, really. And then it did. I was very resentful. The fact that my uncle had a baby girl. I was about 7. My sister's 5 years older than me. And my dad just fawned all over that kid, you know. It's my cousin. And carried her around and my sister and I looked at each other, hey, something wrong with this picture, you know. We didn't get any of that. I don't recall any of it anyway. So that kind of stuff kind of stuck in my craw. How could he show love and affection to someone else but not show it to us? I'm not saying he didn't love us. You know, deep down his heart, I'm sure he did, but he never could express it to us.
How about the words, I'm proud of you? Did he ever say, I'm proud of you?
Never heard that. Later on, after I was an adult, my mother would tell me certain things. He says, well, you know, your dad thinks you're doing great. Well, he never tells me that. But he would say things to her, but never say them to me.
Why do you think that is?
I have no idea, unless it's just the rough way he grew up. He didn't know how. He didn't know how. And that's why I forgave him.
Yeah, I think the idea of understanding that most likely, even though you met his dad one time, most likely that was probably the way his father was.
Oh, I think his father was worse.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. He was very strict and very demanding of the kids. He was the oldest in the family, and I guess he got the brunt of all of it.
Yeah. Was there something that your dad did with you guys, you or your brother, you or your sister, that you would never do with your children, or that you never did with your kids?
Well, he didn't spend enough time with us. And I wish I could turn back the pages and spend more time with my kids, which I didn't do because I traveled so much.
But again, you were doing what you saw modeled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, he made me uncomfortable a lot because he was very strict. I remember one time my sister had a boyfriend, and he offered her something, and I don't know, we were all standing out in the driveway, and my dad had a flashlight in his hand, and he offered my sister something. I can't remember what it was now, and she refused to take it. You know, and I'm the little brother. Take it. You know, my dad hit me on the head with a flashlight and says, "You shut up and get out of here." You know, so you know. That's the way he put his message across.
As a father, if there's one thing you wish you could do over with your own kids, what would it be?
Oh, definitely spend more time with them. I'm talking about quality time where I could discuss things with them about their interests. I would like to show more interest in their interests, be able to discuss it with them.
Is that something that you also wish that your dad would have done?
Oh, yeah, very definitely. I did it to a degree. I did it more than my father did, and I always told my kids I loved them, but still I didn't do enough of it.
If you could say one thing to your father right now, what would it be?
Why couldn't you tell me you love me?
How do you think your relationship with your father has influenced your life?
Well, once I began to understand things, it has influenced me greatly because I can see the mistakes he made and I made, and we can't go back and do things over, but boy, I got a better picture of what's going on now. That's kind of a reverse thing to happen, you know. I don't know how to explain that, but...
Tell me the story about how you came to understand this forgiveness for your father.
Well, it was right after I talked to you that Sunday. And that evening, well, you talked about the interview. And that evening, when I went to bed, I was thinking about this. And instead of thinking of negative things, I started thinking about the positive things about him, in which as I stated, he's always provided. We always had food on our table and clothes on our back. And those things were all positive, because I know there's a lot of fathers that didn't provide for their families. My father did. Even though he didn't say, "I love you," he was providing for us. And I kept thinking along those lines, and I thought about how young he was when I was born. He was about 26 years old, is all. And he just didn't know. He just didn't know how to express love, I don't think. He did with my mother. There was no problem there at all. I loved my mother, and I heard him tell her many, many times. But he couldn't do it with us. So I began to feel a little bit guilty about this, and I said to myself, "I forgive you." And I did it from the heart. And then I asked God to forgive me for even thinking that way, you know. All those years of resentment were gone. I didn't have them anymore. And I went to bed that night, or as I laid there, and I went to sleep, and I was at peace. I still am.
How did that relationship with your father and the influence that he had, how did it affect your marriage?
I don't think it affected it a great deal. You know, I was on my own, or on my own rules. I didn't have any guidance at all. So I don't think he influenced me in any way. It's hard to say, but, you know,
yeah.
Now that I think back on it, I can't see where he did.
Do you think, though, what you saw modeled in him, did any of that play out in the way that, if you look at him as a husband, and you said great things, you said,
yeah.
"Man, I always knew he loved my mom."
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah.
Did in a good or bad way, in whatever way?
Well, that could have
play out with.
You know, it might have unconsciously. It could have.
It's just not something you thought about. It was just
no. It's just something that happened. You've got to realize the responsibility that you have, or the great responsibility you have as a father, and you have to show them guidance. You have to counsel them. You can't just let them go out there and learn on their own, because they're going to learn the wrong things like I did. And it takes a while for you. And if you're lucky, you learn the right way, you go the right direction. Yeah. Not everybody does.
Watch the Father Effect movie for free on YouTube.